2010. The year Michel Platini, UEFA president, announced financial fair play with a simple goal: to save European football from itself. At the time, half of the continent's biggest clubs were on the brink of collapse. AC Milan, Inter, Barcelona, Real Madrid all were piling up massive debts. Wages were exploding. Transfer fees were spiraling out of control, and many clubs were literally suffocating financially. Financial fair play was supposed to be the solution. One simple rule: only spend what you earn. No more clubs rescued by an owner's money. Football was supposed to return to fairness, sporting logic, and healthy competition. But today, more than 15 years later, the system has flipped on its head. The richest clubs bypass the rules with ease. The most powerful clubs rely on elite legal teams capable of delaying any sanction for years. State-backed clubs finance models that are impossible for the rest of the football world to follow. And at the same time, smaller clubs are punished immediately for the slightest mistake. Today, we're going to look at how we got here, how some clubs turn the rules into tools, and how this new system is slowly killing fairness in modern football. And this new system, where money dictates everything, is perfectly illustrated by what's happening in the Premier League. Today, the Premier League generates more money than any other league in the world. Its TV rights far exceed those of the German, Spanish, Italian, and French leagues. And its global exposure naturally attracts the best players, the best managers, the most powerful sponsors, and above all, investors who see the Premier League as a market where huge profits can be made. This concentration of wealth creates a unique environment. In the Premier League, a club has to perform not only on the pitch, but also in the boardroom. Negotiations, contracts, legal structures, rule optimization. That's why English clubs work with some of the world's most powerful law firms, a detail that will become extremely important later in the video. And if the Premier League is discussed so much today, it's because it has become the clearest example of modern football's financial excesses, a league where money makes it easier to bend the rules than anywhere else. We're going to see it right away with our first example, Manchester City. In 2016, a German journalist receives a massive file through a secure channel, 70 million internal documents coming from several European clubs. And very quickly, one club stands out disproportionately, Manchester City. Journalists from Der Spiegel spend months analyzing emails, contracts, and financial spreadsheets. Among the documents, one message immediately catches their attention: an internal email signed by Simon Pearce, a senior executive at the City Football Group, responsible for several of the club's commercial relationships. At the very moment City is being questioned by UEFA about its finances, he replies simply, "We can do what we want." A short sentence, but one that perfectly sums up the mindset at the time. City knew it was bypassing the rules and saw no reason to stop. The leaks show that this wasn't an accident. It was a system that had been in place for nearly 10 years and one that gave the club a massive advantage. The documents reveal several precise, repeated, and well-structured mechanisms used to bypass financial fair play. City declared that its sponsorship deal with Etihad was worth £67.5 million per year. On paper, everything looked legal. An airline sponsoring a club owned by another group, but the internal documents reveal the reality. Etihad was actually paying only £8 million. The remaining £59.5 million came directly from Abu Dhabi United Group, the personal holding company of Sheikh Mansour, the club's owner. This setup is forbidden under financial fair play because an owner is not allowed to inject money into a club while disguising it as commercial revenue. If an owner can hide cash injections behind fake sponsorship income, the entire financial fair play system becomes meaningless. City therefore artificially inflated its revenues in order to spend far more than the club was actually earning. Another scheme revealed by the leaks concerns Roberto Mancini, Manchester City's manager at the time. Officially, Mancini received a salary from Manchester City, but the documents show a second, hidden salary. This additional income, £1.75 million per year, came from a consultancy contract with Al Jazeera Club, a team based in Abu Dhabi and owned by the same entity that owned Manchester City. The issue is simple. This contract was fictitious. Mancini did no real work for Al Jazeera. The payments were used to top up his salary without it appearing in Manchester City's accounts. This allowed City to bypass the wage limits imposed by financial fair play. Why use this kind of setup? Because the higher a club's wage bill, the more legitimate revenue it must generate. By hiding part of Mancini's salary through another club, City could report a lower wage bill than the real one and avoid sanctions. When Der Spiegel publishes its revelations in 2018, UEFA has no choice. It opens an official investigation into Manchester City. After 2 years of inquiries, in February 2020, the verdict is delivered. City is found guilty of misleading authorities, hiding revenues, and breaching financial fair play rules. The sanction is historic, a 2-year ban from European competitions and a €30 million fine. On paper, it's an earthquake. Manchester City should be excluded from the Champions League for 2 seasons. But the club's leadership immediately activates another weapon, the law. City hires one of the most powerful legal firms in the United Kingdom, led by Lord David Panic. The case is taken to the Court of Arbitration for Sport, and that's where something remarkable happens. The CAS does not overturn the sanction because City is innocent. It overturns it because part of the alleged violations is time-barred, as UEFA took too long to complete its investigation. The result, Manchester City avoids the ban on purely procedural grounds. To understand how unfair the system has become, you only need to compare what smaller clubs go through with what Manchester City experiences. In November 2023, Everton is sanctioned for a financial breach of around £19 million. The case is handled within weeks. The verdict comes immediately, and the club is hit with a 10-point deduction, later reduced to 6. In March 2024, Nottingham Forest is sanctioned in turn for overspending by just over £34 million and loses 4 points in the league table. In both cases, the hearings are rushed, just a few hours long. The clubs have almost no real opportunity to defend themselves against such a fast-track procedure. Now look at Manchester City. For this club, the Premier League has brought 115 charges, a case of unprecedented scale in English football. Their hearing is scheduled to last a full 12 weeks, with lawyers billing tens of thousands of pounds per day. The contrast is obvious. Clubs without resources are punished immediately. Ultra-rich clubs buy time, multiply appeals, and bury proceedings under hundreds of pages of legal arguments. In modern football, justice is no longer the same for everyone. It now depends directly on how much a club can afford to pay its lawyers. And if the Manchester City story already sounds absurd, another club went even further. While City was perfecting ways to get around the rules, Chelsea and its owner, Todd Boehly, put in place a legal structure so ambitious that UEFA was literally forced to rewrite its own regulations. It is probably the most spectacular case of rule bending within the rules that modern football has ever seen. It all starts with a paradox. Chelsea's ownership group, Blue Co., lost around €1.1 billion over 2 years, and yet, at the same time, Chelsea officially reported a profit of around €140 million. Both figures come from the same accounts, the same group, the same owner. The question is immediate. How can a club show a positive result when its owner is sinking into a massive deficit? The answer lies in the accounting mechanisms that allowed Chelsea to spend more than all other European clubs combined without ever crossing the red line of financial fair play. Under Todd Boehly, Chelsea started signing extremely expensive players, transfers regularly exceeding 80 or even 100 million euros. But the innovation wasn't in the amounts. It was in the length of the contracts. Chelsea began offering contracts lasting 8, sometimes even 9 years. And that's where the mechanism becomes clear. In football accounting, a transfer fee is never recorded all at once. It is spread over the full length of the player's contract. A simple example makes this easy to understand. A player bought for 100 million euros on an 8-year contract does not appear as a 100 million euros expense. It appears as an annual cost of just 12.5 million euros. Take a concrete case. Chelsea will spend around 15 million euros per year on Enzo Fernandez until 2031, after buying him for 120 million euros in 2023. The result is simple. The longer the contract, the lower the annual impact, and the more a club can spend without appearing to exceed financial limits. That is exactly what Chelsea did. Dozens of massive transfers, a huge accumulation of young players bought across Europe. And yet, everything remained fully compatible with financial fair play rules thanks to amortization spread over almost a decade. This strategy reshaped the European landscape so strongly that UEFA was forced to react urgently. From 2025 onward, it now bans any amortization beyond 5 years, a rule created specifically to stop Chelsea from continuing to exploit this regulatory loophole. And yet, that was only the first layer of the system. Multi-club ownership is the second. When Blue Co. bought Strasbourg, many people thought it would be a classic sporting partnership similar to the relationship Chelsea had for years with Vitesse Arnhem. But very quickly, reality became clear. Strasbourg is not designed as an independent project. It is a club integrated into a much broader financial model, whose logic is defined in London, not in Alsace. In this model, Strasbourg mainly serves to smooth the group's operations. Players, asset values, losses, and amortization are moved through it. Accounting profits are created quickly. Balance sheets are adjusted to allow Chelsea to stay within regulatory limits. The clearest example is the case of Ishe Samuel Smith. On July 29, 2025, Strasbourg bought the player from Chelsea for €7.5 million. 5 weeks later, he was sold back for the exact same price. On paper, the deal is neutral. No gain, no loss. But from an accounting perspective, it's completely different. Samuel Smith signed a 5-year contract at both clubs. That means the €7.5 million fee is amortized at €1.5 million per year. For the 2025 financial year, Strasbourg therefore records €1.5 million in expenses, but €7.5 million in revenue. The same applies on Chelsea's side. In a single operation, both clubs each create around €6 million in accounting profit without spending a single real euro. This mechanism is fully intentional. At Strasbourg, major sporting decisions are not made locally. They are made in London, within the Blue Co structure, by the same people who orchestrate Chelsea's accounting strategy. The Alsatian club sees constant turnover, 18 players arriving, 20 leaving, in a permanent rotation that serves the financial model more than the construction of a team. The supporters have understood this and have been strongly protesting against the system for several months. Other French clubs also protest publicly, but are far quieter behind the scenes. In a Ligue 1 struggling financially, they all hope to sell a player to Blue Co, and no one wants to fall out with one of the few buyers capable of paying immediately. Strasbourg therefore finds itself playing an unprecedented role in French football, a club that exists on a sporting level, but operates above all as an accounting extension of the Chelsea project. And yet, what Blue Co is doing between Chelsea and Strasbourg is nothing compared to what comes next. Because the most spectacular operation has nothing to do with a player transfer. It concerns Chelsea and an idea very few people thought possible, selling its own assets to itself. And this is where the story definitively crosses into something that has nothing to do with football anymore. Because to understand how a group like Blue Co can lose €1.1 billion in just 2 years, while still showing Chelsea as a profitable club, you have to look at the most extraordinary operation ever carried out by a Premier League club. Chelsea owns several very concrete assets: 2 hotels attached to Stamford Bridge, the club's women's team, and multiple real estate infrastructures. One day, the executives had an idea, not to sell these assets to an external investor to bring in real cash, but to sell them to another company within the same group. In other words, selling assets to themselves through an entity controlled by the same owners, and that's exactly what they did. The 2 hotels were sold for €85 million. The women's team was valued at €240 million, a figure completely disconnected from the real market but written in black and white in an internal transaction. In total, Chelsea instantly records €325 million in income. And because these assets no longer sit on the club's balance sheet, Chelsea immediately shows a massive profit, fully aligned with financial fair play requirements. Chelsea's owners simply bought something from themselves. A sister company within the same group records the purchase. The deficit is moved from one entity to another. Blue Co therefore continues to accumulate colossal losses, while Chelsea appears as a profitable club, perfectly compliant, free to continue operating on the transfer market. It's a ruthless accounting illusion. Chelsea is presented as a healthy business while everything rests on a simple internal bookkeeping trick. Chelsea pushed the rules to their absolute limits, showing that a club that is sufficiently well structured can bypass almost every constraint while remaining officially within the law. And if Blue Co deploys so many accounting techniques, it's because in the Premier League, a competitive club can generate colossal revenues: TV rights, global exposure, player sales, and European qualification. The message behind all this is simple. Chelsea spends, restructures, takes on debt, and manipulates its balance sheets because it knows that in the Premier League, every single season can be worth tens or even hundreds of millions of euros. When you put together what Manchester City and Chelsea are doing, one thing becomes clear. These economic models cannot be replicated anywhere else. They require a level of financial, legal, and commercial resources that very few clubs possess. Porto, Benfica, PSV, or Sevilla simply cannot compete on that level. Even strong clubs from Italy, Germany, Spain, or France lack the means, the structures, and the networks needed to implement this kind of setup. In this environment, mid-tier Premier League clubs are forced to keep up with the pace. They spend heavily, take major sporting and financial risks, and rely on expensive recruitment just to remain competitive against the giants of the league. One bad season can lead to relegation, and relegation in the Premier League is an economic shock that very few clubs can survive. On the other end of the spectrum, smaller clubs have no room for maneuver. They cannot optimize their accounts like the Giants do, they cannot drag legal cases out for months, and they do not have teams of lawyers capable of defending every accounting detail. Everton experienced this with their 10-point deduction, and Nottingham Forest with their 4-point deduction. Meanwhile, Manchester City's hearing stretches over several weeks. This contrast highlights a simple reality. Clubs do not all have the same ability to defend themselves. The Premier League has become a competition where money also buys protection, and this system ends up affecting the entire European football landscape because no other league can mobilize the same economic, legal, and financial tools. The current rules were never designed to withstand modern football. They were created for a sport where clubs lived off ticket sales, local sponsors, and reasonable transfers, not for an ecosystem dominated by financial groups, states, international holding companies, and complex legal structures. Today, UEFA is discussing new regulations, particularly around multi-club ownership, internal asset valuations, and transfer amortization. But there is no guarantee these measures will be enough. Every time a new rule is introduced, a sufficiently powerful club finds a way to legally work around it. Let me know in the comments what you think. How do you see the future of European football and the future of the Premier League within this system? If you enjoyed the video, don't hesitate to like and subscribe. It helps the channel grow a lot. Thanks for watching, and see you soon.